I remember the first time I saw myself in the mirror and didn't recognize who was looking back. My breath caught in my chest, and for a moment I felt like I was standing outside of my own life, watching someone else's story unfold. The reflection staring at me was familiar but softer, more vulnerable, almost fragile. And yet, I couldn't look away. That night felt like a secret I was stealing from the world, a stolen piece of beauty that wasn't supposed to belong to me. I had slipped into something that wasn't mine, at least not in the way the world would have thought, and in doing so, I uncovered something hidden inside me. It was terrifying and thrilling all at once, the kind of moment you know will never leave you no matter how hard you try. But let me back up a little. Stories like mine don't happen overnight. They creep in quietly, disguised as curiosity or accident, until suddenly they're too big to ignore. You go from just trying it once to standing in front of the mirror wondering who you really are and what you've been hiding all this time. People assume that crossdressing is only about clothing. That it's about fabric or makeup or some surface-level disguise. But the truth is, at least for me, it became something far deeper. Each layer I put on wasn't about hiding, it was about revealing. Revealing a part of me that had been begging to breathe for years, even when I didn't have the words to explain it. Of course, back then I wasn't ready to admit any of that. I thought I was just playing with fire, flirting with something forbidden. I didn't realize it would change how I saw myself, how I loved, how I connected with the world. I didn't realize it would take me from shame to confidence, from secrecy to something closer to freedom. This is my story, the slow unraveling of who I thought I was, and the even slower discovery of who I could become. It's not perfect. It's messy, awkward, sometimes painful, but also full of moments I wouldn't trade for anything. So if you've ever kept a secret so heavy it felt like it might crush you, if you've ever looked in the mirror and wondered if the person staring back was the real you, then maybe, just maybe, you'll understand the journey I'm about to share. Because this isn't just about clothes. It's about identity, trust, love, and learning to stop hiding from myself. And it all started in the most ordinary way, when I was still just another quiet person trying to live a normal life, completely unaware of how much I was about to change. When people look back on their lives, they usually point to big moments, the first kiss, the graduation, the day they left home. But in truth, most stories don't begin with fireworks. They begin in silence. In small routines. In the way you pour your coffee, or the way your shoes squeak on the floor of a job you don't really love. That's where my journey began, not with something spectacular, but with a quiet life I had settled into. I lived in a modest apartment on the second floor of a building that always smelled faintly of dust and laundry detergent. The kind of place where neighbors nodded politely in the hall but rarely spoke. I kept to myself, and most days slipped into each other like identical pages in a book. Work, dinner, a bit of TV, sleep. Repeat. On paper, nothing was wrong. I had a decent job at a local office, filing reports, answering calls, being the reliable person everyone could count on but rarely noticed. I was the type who never made waves. My desk was neat, my shirts were always pressed, and I learned to smile just enough to seem approachable without ever really opening up. But beneath that calm exterior was something restless. A quiet hum I couldn't silence. I didn't know how to name it then, so I ignored it. I told myself everyone felt that way, like they were pretending to be someone slightly different than who they really were. Evenings were my safe haven. That was when the world finally left me alone. I'd close the door, toss my keys on the counter, and let the silence wrap around me. Sometimes I'd read. Sometimes I'd just sit in the dim light of my living room, staring at nothing, trying to make sense of that restless hum inside me. It was during those quiet nights that my curiosity began to surface in ways I didn't expect. At first, it was harmless, browsing online, stumbling into spaces I didn't think existed, seeing people who looked free in ways I couldn't explain. They weren't superheroes or celebrities. They were just people like me, only braver. People who dared to step into parts of themselves the world might not understand. I'd scroll through those pictures and stories late into the night, telling myself it was just curiosity. Just looking. But deep down, I felt a pull I didn't want to admit. My heart would race, not in fear exactly, but in a strange mix of longing and recognition. Like I had stumbled onto something that wasn't new at all, it was familiar, like coming across a childhood memory you'd forgotten you even had. Still, I buried it. By morning, I was back in my pressed shirts, my tidy routines, my polite nods in the hallway. I convinced myself that the nighttime version of me was just a dreamer, nothing more. But cracks started to form in my carefully built facade. Little things. The way my eyes lingered too long in certain aisles at stores. The way my heart skipped when I saw someone expressing themselves without fear. The way I began to wonder, not just what it would feel like to try, but who I might be if I did. I wasn't ready to face those questions. Not yet. So I kept moving through life as though nothing was changing. But the truth was, everything already was. Because secrets have a way of growing, quietly, like roots beneath the soil. And before you realize it, they're strong enough to crack through concrete. At that time, the only person who ever came close to seeing past my walls was Emma, a friend I had known since college. She had this way of disarming people, of making you feel like your secrets weren't dangerous but simply part of being human. Emma was warm, quick to laugh, and never seemed to care what people thought of her. Where I was careful, she was bold. Where I hesitated, she leapt. We didn't see each other every day, but when we did, I always felt lighter. She teased me for being too serious, too quiet, but it was never cruel. Sometimes she'd look at me like she was waiting for me to say something I couldn't quite bring myself to share. Emma will become important later in this story, though at the time, I didn't realize how much. For now, she was just part of my safe circle, the tiny corner of my life where I didn't feel entirely invisible. And so, my days went on. Work, dinner, quiet evenings. A restless hum beneath it all. A secret curiosity I told myself I would never act on. But life has a way of surprising you, often when you least expect it. And my surprise was closer than I ever imagined. The thing about living with a secret is that it teaches you how to act. I had become good at performing the version of myself everyone expected. The reliable coworker. The polite neighbor. The quiet friend who never asked for too much. I wore that version of myself like a second skin, so convincingly that even I almost believed it. Almost. But then there were those cracks. The moments that slipped through no matter how careful I tried to be. At work, I shared an office with 3 others. They were friendly enough, but we lived in different worlds. Conversations about football scores or weekend barbecues didn't interest me, so I usually smiled, nodded, and stayed focused on my computer. It was easier that way. Yet sometimes, when I caught my reflection in the dark screen of my monitor, I'd feel a strange distance, like I was staring at a stranger wearing my face. It wasn't unhappiness exactly. More like incompleteness. Like I was waiting for something, though I didn't know what. Emma noticed things, though. She always did. One Thursday evening, she called me out of the blue. I remember sitting at my kitchen table, eating leftovers, when her voice filled the room with its usual warmth. "Hey, stranger," she said. "You free this weekend?" I hesitated. I usually did. I wasn't good at spontaneous plans. My comfort zone was routine, predictability. But with Emma, it was hard to say no. "I think so," I said cautiously. "What's up?" "I'm dragging you out," she replied with mock sternness. "You've been hiding again, haven't you?" I laughed nervously, though I knew she wasn't wrong. Emma always seemed to know when I had retreated too far into my shell. We met that Saturday at a little cafe downtown. Emma breezed in wearing a patterned scarf and her usual confidence, while I sat there in my muted sweater, already feeling out of place. She ordered coffee, then fixed me with a playful look. "You always look like you're carrying the weight of the world," she teased. "What are you thinking about all the time?" I shrugged, avoiding her gaze. "Nothing important." "Liar," she said with a smile, but she let it go. That was the thing about Emma, she never pushed too hard. She had this way of leaving space for you to fill in later, when you were ready. Still, her words stayed with me. They stirred that restless hum inside me, the one I kept trying to ignore. Because the truth was, I was thinking all the time. Thinking about the reflection in the mirror that didn't match the person inside. Thinking about those late nights when I let myself wonder what it would feel like to step out of the box I lived in. I wanted to tell her. Sometimes I even rehearsed it in my head. But when the moment came, I always swallowed the words. Instead, I let the conversation drift to safer topics, her new project at work, a book she was reading, the movie she insisted I had to see. And as always, being with her made me feel lighter, even if she never knew why. Nights were the hardest. I'd come home from evenings like that with Emma and feel the weight of my silence. I'd pace the apartment, restless, the urge growing stronger. And sometimes, I gave in. I'd pull something from the back of my closet. Not much, at first. Just small things I'd collected quietly over time. A scarf. A soft cardigan. A bottle of nail polish I'd bought on impulse and hidden away. I'd hold these things like forbidden treasures, my hands shaking with a mix of fear and longing. The first time I painted my nails, I thought my heart might burst from the noise of it. Each stroke of color felt like a declaration, even though no one was there to see. I kept the blinds closed, terrified of being caught, even though logic told me no one was watching. When I finally looked down at my hands, something inside me shifted. They didn't look like mine anymore. Or maybe, they finally did. But the moment never lasted. I'd wipe the polish off, shove everything back into its hiding place, and sit there staring at the evidence in the trash. My heart would ache with confusion. Relief that it was gone. Regret that it was gone. And then, the next day, I'd go back to work, back to nodding politely, back to pretending nothing had changed. But of course, it had. Every secret night chipped away at the careful mask I wore during the day. Every glimpse in the mirror showed me someone I wasn't ready to face. And every time Emma looked at me with that knowing smile, I wondered how much longer I could keep the truth locked inside. At the time, I didn't know the answer. All I knew was that the cracks were spreading. The secret I kept telling myself was small, harmless, and temporary was becoming impossible to ignore. Something was coming. I could feel it in the restless hum that never left me. And when it finally arrived, it would change everything. It happened on a night I didn't see coming. That's the way life tends to work. You spend so long building walls around yourself, convinced you're safe, and then one small moment knocks everything down. Emma was the reason, of course. She always had a way of stirring change in me without even trying. It started with a text. Movie night at my place? Don't even think about saying no. I've already got snacks. I smiled at the message. Emma never asked, she declared. And most of the time, I gave in. Her apartment was warmer than mine, both in color and in feeling. Books lined the shelves, cozy blankets were tossed over chairs, and there was always some faint trace of vanilla in the air. It was the kind of place where you could breathe a little easier, but that also meant my guard slipped without me realizing. We settled onto the couch, laughing at a cheesy old film, when Emma suddenly paused the screen. She turned to me with that mischievous spark in her eyes, the one that usually meant trouble. "Can I ask you something?" she said. My heart skipped. I hated that question. It always felt like the prelude to something dangerous. "Sure," I said, trying to sound casual. She studied me for a moment. "Why do I feel like you're always hiding part of yourself?" The air left my lungs. My first instinct was to deflect, to laugh it off. "What do you mean?" Emma tilted her head. "I don't know. You're careful. Too careful. Like you're afraid of being seen. But I've known you for years. And I can tell there's more to you than what you let people see." Her words hit like a spotlight. I forced a smile, desperate to keep the conversation safe. "You're overthinking it. I'm just boring, that's all." Emma didn't buy it. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. You know I wouldn't judge you, right? Whatever it is, you can tell me. My pulse raced. The urge to spill everything fought with the terror of what she might think. My secret pressed at my lips, begging to be spoken. But fear won, as it always did. I'm fine, Emma, I said softly. Really? For a long moment, she searched my face, and I thought she might push harder. But then she sighed, smiling gently. All right. I'll let it go. For now. We went back to the movie, but I couldn't focus. Her words echoed in my mind, scraping against the walls I had built. Later that night, after the movie ended, Emma disappeared into her bedroom for a moment. She came back holding a small box and set it on the coffee table. What's that? I asked, confused. She grinned. A game. Before I could protest, she opened the box to reveal a jumble of scarves, costume jewelry, and a few random makeup items. I was helping a friend clean out some old stuff, and she gave this to me. I thought we could have some fun. My stomach flipped. I tried to laugh, but my voice caught. Fun? Yeah, she said, eyes glinting. Like a silly makeover challenge. Come on, don't look so terrified. It's just us. I froze. Of all the things she could have suggested, this was the one that struck too close to home. My mind screamed that this was my chance, the perfect excuse, wrapped in the safety of her laughter. And yet, fear held me in place. Emma studied my expression, then softened. Hey. We don't have to if you don't want to. I just thought it'd be funny. Her kindness broke something in me. I didn't trust my voice, so I only nodded. She smiled, satisfied. Great. You're my canvas first. And just like that, she leaned in with a brush of powder, a stroke of color. I sat frozen, my heart thundering, as she hummed playfully and worked. I told myself this was just her game, that none of it meant anything. But inside, something was stirring. When she clipped a scarf loosely around my shoulders, I caught my reflection in the darkened TV screen. For the briefest moment, I saw a glimpse of that other self, the one from my secret nights. And the shock of recognition nearly made me gasp. Emma laughed lightly. Not bad. You clean up pretty well. I tried to smile, but emotion threatened to spill over. She had no idea what she'd just unlocked. The night ended simply enough. We cleaned up the mess, joked about the ridiculousness of it all, and said our goodbyes. But as I walked home, my mind was on fire. Because for the first time, my secret world and my real world had collided. And it hadn't ended in disaster. In fact, it had felt right. That single night lit a fuse I couldn't put out. That walk home felt different. The streets were quiet, the night air cool against my skin, but inside I was burning. My thoughts wouldn't settle. I kept replaying the moment Emma had looped that scarf around me, the way her laughter had made it all feel harmless, almost natural. It should have been a silly game, nothing more. But for me, it was like a door had been cracked open. And once a door is open, it's impossible not to look inside. When I got home, I didn't even bother turning on the lights. I went straight to my bedroom, pulled open the drawer where I kept my hidden things, and laid them out carefully on the bed. The scarf. The cardigan. The nail polish. My secret little collection. I sat there staring at them, my hands trembling. Just hours ago, Emma had touched me with the same kind of softness these items represented. She hadn't laughed cruelly. She hadn't judged. She'd smiled. She'd called me beautiful in her own playful way. And for the first time, I wondered, maybe this wasn't something to be ashamed of. The thought terrified me. But it also thrilled me. That night, I dressed again. Slowly. Reverently. This time, it felt different. Like I wasn't sneaking or stealing, but continuing something Emma had started. And when I looked in the mirror, I didn't flinch. I didn't rush to wipe it away. Instead, I whispered to the reflection, this could be you. The next morning, though, reality rushed back. At work, surrounded by papers and ringing phones, it all seemed impossible again. I tried to bury the feelings, to convince myself it had been just a passing indulgence. But Emma wouldn't let me. She texted me that afternoon. "So, about last night. You were a surprisingly good sport, winking face. My stomach flipped. I typed and erased a dozen replies before settling on. "You caught me off guard, that's all." Her response came quickly. "Off guard, huh? You looked more comfortable than you realize." I froze, staring at the words. My heart raced. Did she know? Could she see through me that easily? I didn't reply right away, but Emma didn't press. She never did. Still, her words lingered like a spark I couldn't put out. The following weekend, she invited me over again. This time, the box was waiting on the coffee table when I arrived. "I thought we could finish what we started," she said casually, sipping her tea. I laughed nervously. "You really like this game, don't you?" She shrugged with a grin. "What can I say? It's fun. And I think you need it more than I do." Her words caught me off guard. Need it? Emma leaned back, studying me with that knowing look that always made me squirm. "You light up in a way I don't usually see. Last week, you looked free. Like a weight came off your shoulders. It suits you." I swallowed hard, unable to find words. Emma didn't push further. Instead, she patted the seat beside her. "Come on. Let's make it official. Tonight, you get the full treatment." Part of me wanted to run. But another part, the louder part, sat down. Emma worked slowly, with patience and humor. She tried different scarves, experimented with colors, teased me gently when I flinched at the mascara wand. "Relax," she said with a smile. "You act like I'm torturing you." I laughed despite myself, the tension easing. And gradually, I stopped thinking about how strange it felt. I just let it happen. When she finally turned me toward the mirror, I couldn't breathe. The reflection staring back wasn't perfect, not polished like the images I'd secretly admired online. But it was me, different, softer, radiant in a way I'd never allowed myself to be. I touched the edge of the scarf, the corner of my mouth curving into a smile I hadn't expected. Emma's voice broke the silence. "There you are." I turned to her, startled. "What do you mean?" She shrugged lightly. "I don't know. Just feels like I'm finally seeing the real you." The words hit deeper than she probably intended. I couldn't reply. My throat was too tight. That night, when I left her apartment, I carried something with me I hadn't felt before: permission. Permission to explore. Permission to exist in a way I had always denied myself. But with that permission came fear. Because once you taste freedom, hiding becomes unbearable. In the days that followed, I couldn't stop thinking about it. The reflection in the mirror. Emma's gentle teasing. Her quiet, knowing smile. I replayed it all endlessly, torn between exhilaration and dread. What if she was just humoring me? What if she told someone? What if I was reading too much into her kindness? And yet, she hadn't mocked me. She hadn't recoiled. She had leaned in, invited me to step further. One evening, I caught myself standing in front of my closet, holding one of the scarves against my shoulders. For once, I didn't shove it away in panic. I wore it for hours, even while making dinner. And when I finally took it off, I felt a strange ache, as if I had left part of myself behind. It became harder to pretend. Harder to slip back into the tidy, pressed shirt version of me. The inciting moment had come and gone, but its echoes were everywhere. Emma had opened a door. And no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't close it again. The days after Emma's makeover felt heavier than I expected. Not in a bad way, more like carrying a secret that was slowly shifting from burden to treasure. For so long, my private moments of dressing had been followed by guilt, regret, the frantic need to undo everything before anyone could find out. But now, something was different. Emma had seen me. Not completely, not the whole truth, but enough. And she hadn't turned away. That thought haunted me in quiet moments. On the train to work. While brushing my teeth. Lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling. Her words echoed again and again, "There you are." But with the warmth of that memory came fear. Because if she could see me, if she could sense the part of me I worked so hard to hide, how long before others did too? I doubled down on my routines, trying to act as if nothing had changed. I ironed my shirts extra sharp, kept my tone clipped and polite at work, avoided mirrors more than usual. But pretending only made the restless hum louder. Emma, of course, didn't let me escape. The following Friday, she texted. "You free? I need your opinion on something." I almost said no, but curiosity got the better of me. When I arrived at her apartment, she was waiting with a grin and a shopping bag on the table. "What's this?" I asked cautiously. "A little experiment," she said, pulling out a simple blouse. It was soft, pale, unassuming, yet unmistakably feminine. My chest tightened. "Emma." She held up a hand. "Relax. I bought it for myself, but the fit's off. Thought you could try it. Just for fun." Her tone was light, casual, but her eyes lingered on me with quiet intent. She knew exactly what she was doing. My instinct was to refuse. To laugh it off. To keep the line between secret and reality intact. But Emma's confidence disarmed me. And a small, dangerous part of me wanted to say yes. I hesitated too long, and Emma pressed the blouse into my hands. "Go on. Humor me." The fabric was soft under my fingers, almost weightless. My pulse hammered as I disappeared into her bathroom. Slipping it over my head, I felt the world tilt. It was such a small change, no makeup, no accessories, just a blouse. But standing there, looking in the mirror, I felt closer. Like stepping into a role that had always been waiting for me. When I walked out, Emma's face softened. She didn't laugh. She didn't make a joke. She just smiled, warm and genuine. "There she is again," she whispered. I froze. The words wrapped around me, both terrifying and comforting. I can't," I stammered, tugging at the hem of the blouse. "This isn't." "Isn't what?" Emma asked gently. I shook my head. "It isn't me." Her smile didn't falter. "Looks like you to me." I wanted to argue, to retreat, but my reflection in her window betrayed me. I didn't look ridiculous. I didn't look like I was playing dress-up. I looked like someone I wanted to know better. The weight of it all crashed down, and I quickly pulled the blouse off, folding it with trembling hands. Emma didn't stop me. She just reached out, touched my wrist, and said quietly, "You don't have to run from yourself, you know." I left soon after, my emotions tangled in knots. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing the look in Emma's eyes, the softness in her voice. She wasn't mocking me. She wasn't even pushing. She was inviting. And for the first time, I let myself imagine what it would feel like to stop hiding. Not just at night, not just in secret, but truly, to step into that reflection and stay there. The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. Over the next few weeks, Emma kept nudging me, always in playful, subtle ways. One evening, she pulled out her nail polish and waved it teasingly. "Your turn." I rolled my eyes. "I don't think so." "Come on. It's just color. Nothing permanent." I resisted for as long as I could, but eventually caved. As she carefully painted my nails, I watched her expression, focused, calm, completely unbothered. To her, it wasn't strange. It wasn't wrong. It was just us. When she finished, she blew gently on my fingers and smiled. "Beautiful." The word sent shivers through me. Another night, she coaxed me into trying on a simple skirt she had tucked away. I hesitated, but she laughed softly. It's just fabric. You're giving it too much power. But it wasn't just fabric. The moment it settled around me, I felt my shoulders relax, my breath deepen. It was like sliding into a version of myself that had been waiting in the wings all along. Emma noticed. She always noticed. See, she said softly. Doesn't it feel good to stop pretending? I didn't answer, but she didn't need me to. Of course, with each step forward came a wave of doubt. Late at night, I'd sit in my apartment, staring at the faint traces of nail polish I hadn't scrubbed off completely, and panic would set in. What if someone at work noticed? What if Emma regretted encouraging me? What if I was building a life out of something fragile, something doomed to collapse? But then I'd remember the way I felt in those moments with her, the freedom, the laughter, the unexpected joy. And I couldn't let it go. Emma became my safe space, the only person who saw the cracks in my mask and didn't turn away. Sometimes she teased, calling me her secret project. Other times she was gentle, reminding me in quiet whispers that there was nothing wrong with who I was becoming. And slowly, piece by piece, the shame began to loosen its grip. I wasn't ready to declare anything. Not to the world, not even fully to myself. But in Emma's apartment, in those late nights of scarves, polish, and laughter, I began to breathe easier. For the first time in my life, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I wasn't broken. Maybe I was simply becoming. There's a point in every secret where it stops being something you do and starts being who you are. I didn't realize I had crossed that line until one Saturday afternoon when Emma looked at me and asked a question I wasn't ready for. Have you ever thought about choosing a name? The words caught me off guard. I blinked at her, heart stuttering. A name? She smiled softly. Yeah. You know, for her. I froze. We hadn't spoken about it in those terms before. It had always been scarves, nail polish, laughter, playful, almost like a game. But with that single question, Emma pulled the curtain back on something deeper. She wasn't just seeing me dressed differently. She was acknowledging her. The version of me I barely allowed myself to imagine. My throat tightened. I don't know. Emma tilted her head, studying me with those warm, unflinching eyes. Think about it. Names have power. They let you step into yourself. I didn't answer, but the thought burrowed deep. That night, lying in bed, I whispered different names into the dark. Some felt wrong, too sharp, too foreign. Others lingered, soft on my tongue, like they had been waiting all along. And for the first time, I realized this wasn't just about clothes. It was about identity. About giving shape to something that had been formless inside me for years. From then on, something shifted. Emma continued her gentle nudges, but I wasn't resisting as much anymore. When she offered me a blouse, I accepted without argument. When she painted my nails, I found myself admiring them in the light instead of scrubbing them away in panic. And one evening, when she surprised me with a wig she had ordered online, just a simple bob, nothing elaborate, I actually laughed with joy as she adjusted it on my head. The reflection that stared back at me was startling, yes, but it was also beautiful. I whispered, almost without meaning to, "She looks real." Emma's hand rested lightly on my shoulder. She is real. I swallowed hard, fighting back a rush of emotions. For the first time, I wasn't just playing dress-up in secret. I was beginning to see someone new, and yet familiar, emerge. The changes seeped into my daily life in quiet ways. At work, I caught myself standing taller, speaking with more ease. I smiled more, laughed more. My coworkers noticed, though they didn't understand. "You seem lighter lately," one said. I brushed it off, but inside, I knew the truth. Even small things like choosing softer fabrics for my shirts or lingering in sections of stores I used to avoid began to feel less like guilty indulgences and more like natural expressions. The lines between the two versions of myself were blurring. And then came the night Emma coaxed me into going out, not far, not public, just a quiet drive. "Trust me," she said, handing me a simple dress. "No one will see us. But you deserve to feel what it's like outside these walls." My fear was immediate and overwhelming. But her voice was steady, her eyes kind. And somehow, I said yes. The drive was quiet, my nerves buzzing, but Emma kept the conversation light, telling stories and making me laugh until I forgot my anxiety. She parked by a secluded overlook where the city lights shimmered in the distance. When I stepped out of the car, the cool night air brushed against my skin, carrying the fabric of the dress with it. For a moment, I felt utterly exposed. But then, something unexpected. Freedom. The stars above, the city below, the whisper of wind through the trees, it all wrapped around me like an embrace. I wasn't trapped in four walls anymore. I wasn't hiding. I was here, in the open, breathing as myself. Emma stood beside me, silent, as though she knew words would only shatter the moment. When I finally looked at her, my eyes stung with tears. "Thank you," I whispered. She squeezed my hand gently. "Always." From that night, I couldn't go back. The fear didn't disappear, it was still there, a constant shadow. But it was no longer the loudest voice. The louder voice now was the one that whispered of possibility, of freedom, of a self I wanted to know better. Emma started calling me by the name I had finally chosen, softly at first, then with more confidence. Every time she said it, my chest warmed. It was like hearing music only I had been waiting for. And the more I heard it, the more I believed it. The midpoint of my journey wasn't about clothes or makeup or even Emma's teasing. It was about the shift inside me, the moment I stopped thinking of this part of myself as a secret I had to erase and started seeing it as something I could nurture. For the first time, I wasn't ashamed of the reflection in the mirror. For the first time, I smiled and thought, "This is me." And that realization, as terrifying as it was, became the beginning of everything that followed. It's strange how quickly confidence can crumble. One moment I felt unstoppable, like I had finally unlocked a piece of myself I had been searching for my entire life. The next, one careless glance shattered me. It happened on a Sunday afternoon. Emma had convinced me to try going to a quiet cafe. Nothing bold. Nothing reckless. Just us, tucked in a corner where no one would notice. I wore a soft sweater dress Emma had chosen, subtle makeup, the wig styled simply. She had been patient with me, steadying my nerves as I rehearsed how to walk, how to sit, how to order coffee without my voice giving me away. At first, it was almost magical. Sitting across from Emma, sipping coffee, I felt like an ordinary girl out for a quiet afternoon. I even caught myself laughing freely, forgetting to worry. But then, I noticed him. A man at the counter, maybe in his late 20s, staring at me a little too long. His brow furrowed, his mouth tightening in that way people do when they've noticed something doesn't fit. My chest constricted. Suddenly, I couldn't breathe. Emma leaned in, whispering, "Hey. Stay with me. You're okay." But I wasn't okay. My thoughts spiraled. He knows. Everyone knows. They're all staring. I look ridiculous. I'm a joke. I gripped the edge of the table, my hands trembling. "I need to leave," I whispered. Emma's face softened with concern, but she nodded. She didn't argue. She gathered her things quickly, and we slipped out. The moment the cafe door closed behind us, I broke. Tears blurred my vision. My chest heaved as panic swallowed me whole. On the walk back to the car, I could barely speak. Every shadow felt like judgment. Every sound felt like laughter at my expense. By the time we sat in the car, I was shaking uncontrollably. "I can't do this," I choked out. "I thought I could, but I can't. It's too much. I'll never be enough. I'll never look right. I'll never be right." Emma reached for my hands, but I pulled away, curling into myself. "This is stupid. I should have stopped when it was just fun." When it was just at home. I'm not. I'm not meant for this. The silence between us was heavy. For a long moment, Emma didn't speak. Then, her voice was steady, quiet, but unshakable. Don't you dare say that. I looked up, startled. Her eyes burned with something fierce. You don't get to erase yourself like that. You don't get to call what we've built stupid. You've come too far. I shook my head, tears spilling. But did you see him? He knew. He looked at me like I was wrong. Emma leaned closer, her voice sharp but tender. So what? One stranger? One look? You're going to let him decide who you are? After everything? After the night you whispered your name like it was a secret prayer? After the way you glowed the first time you stepped outside? No. I won't let you throw that away. Her words hit me hard. I wanted to believe her, but fear still gnawed at me. But what if everyone sees me that way? What if I never pass? What if? She cut me off gently, but firmly. You don't have to pass. You don't have to meet anyone's standard. You only have to be you. That's the point. That's always been the point. I buried my face in my hands, sobbing. I'm scared. Her hand rested on my back, steady and warm. I know. I know you are. But being scared doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're alive. It means you're stepping into something real. That night was the closest I came to quitting. I sat in front of the mirror, wiping away the makeup I had applied so carefully, staring at the face beneath. The face that felt caught between two worlds, not fully belonging to either. I whispered my chosen name out loud, but it cracked, fragile. I almost couldn't bear to say it again. Maybe Emma's wrong. Maybe I'm not strong enough. Maybe this was never meant for me. But then, another voice inside me, quieter but persistent, or maybe this is the test. Maybe this is the moment you choose who you're going to be. I sat there for hours, battling myself. One moment ready to throw everything away, the next clinging to the small spark Emma had lit in me. The confrontation came to a head a week later. Emma and I sat together in her room. She studied me, her expression unreadable. Finally, she spoke. I need to ask you something. Do you actually want this? Or are you just doing it because of me? The question cut deep. My throat tightened. What do you mean? Emma folded her arms, her voice calm but direct. I need to know if this is yours. Because I can't carry it for you. I can't keep pulling you forward if you're going to keep trying to run back. Her honesty stung. But I knew she was right. I took a shaky breath, staring at the floor. I don't know if I can handle it. The stares. The fear. The way it feels like I'm constantly balancing between myself and who people expect me to be. Emma leaned forward, her voice softer now. But do you want it? I hesitated. My chest rose and fell, my heart pounding. And then? I nodded. Yes, I whispered. I want it. Even if it's hard. Even if I fail. I want to know who I am. Emma's eyes softened. Relief washed across her face. She reached for my hands, holding them firmly. Then that's enough, she said. That's all I needed to hear. In that moment, the confrontation wasn't just with Emma. It was with myself. With my fear. With my shame. With the part of me that still wanted to hide. And for the first time, I didn't let that part win. I chose myself. Even trembling, even afraid, I chose to keep going. And that choice became the turning point. The days after that conversation with Emma felt different. Not easier, not magically free of fear, but steadier. Like the ground beneath me, once so shaky, had finally begun to solidify. I started small. Not rushing. Not chasing some perfect image. One morning, I simply wore my soft sweater at home, no wig, no makeup. I looked in the mirror, and instead of criticizing every detail, I whispered, "You're here. You're real." It wasn't about passing. It wasn't about convincing the world. It was about learning to see myself without flinching. Emma noticed the change, too. She smiled more when she looked at me, not with pride for what I looked like, but for the way I carried myself. "You're standing taller," she said one evening, as we brushed our teeth side by side. I laughed through the foam. "I guess I'm not as scared to take up space anymore." Her eyes softened. "That's all I ever wanted for you." The next test came quietly. A late summer afternoon, Emma suggested another cafe trip. The memory of that last outing still lingered, sharp and raw. My instinct was to refuse, to retreat into safety. But then I remembered the choice I had made, to keep going, even afraid. So, I agreed. This time, I dressed simply. Jeans, a blouse, light makeup. Nothing extravagant, just me, showing up. When we walked in, my heart still raced. Every glance still felt heavy. But something was different. I wasn't bracing for disaster. I wasn't ready to run. And when the barista smiled at me and asked for my order, I smiled back. My voice trembled, but it came out steady enough. She didn't hesitate. She didn't question. She just typed in my drink and moved on. I exhaled, almost laughing with relief. Emma squeezed my hand under the table. "See? The world didn't end." I nodded, my chest swelling. "No. It didn't." Over the following weeks, I found myself slowly weaving both sides of me together. Not discarding one for the other, but blending them in ways that felt true. Some days, I still wore the clothes I used to wear before all this started. Other days, I dressed in ways that made my reflection light up. The difference was, neither felt like hiding anymore. I wasn't living a double life. I was living my life. And though fear still whispered at times, it no longer controlled me. One night, Emma and I sat on her porch, the air cool and the stars bright above us. She nudged me gently. "So, where do you see yourself in a year?" I thought about it for a long moment. The old me would have panicked at the question, desperate for a concrete answer. But now, I let the silence stretch, and then I smiled softly. "I don't know," I admitted. "And for the first time, that doesn't scare me." Emma leaned her head against my shoulder. "That's beautiful." We sat like that for a while, the night wrapping around us, peaceful and unhurried. For once, I wasn't thinking about who was watching, or whether I looked right, or if the world would ever fully understand me. I was just here. Present. Alive. And that was enough. The journey hadn't given me certainty. It hadn't erased my doubts. But it had given me something more important, the courage to face myself. The courage to keep choosing, every day, to live honestly, even if imperfectly. And maybe that was the truest kind of transformation. Not becoming someone else, but finally daring to become myself.